Welcome to Talking Points. I'm Esme Murphy. Yet again, there is a bill in the state legislature this year to legalize sports betting. And once again, I would bet that it doesn't pass. But there is something that is very different this year. The bill's Senate author is betting on a change President Trump made in the prediction markets, allowing prediction market sites like Kalshi and Polymarket to operate in all 50 states. Prediction markets are where participants can buy and sell contracts based on the outcome of future events, ranging from elections to sports. From many consumers' standpoint, it's similar to just placing a bet. In this screen grab of prediction site Polymarket, you could place a bet on everything from who will be the next prime minister of Denmark to how high crude oil prices will go to the NCAA basketball outcomes. The author of the Minnesota Senate bill, DFL Senator Nick Frenz, thinks the prediction markets are a game changer because they already allow what is essentially betting to happen in all 50 states. In this edition of Talking Points, I'm speaking with Senator Frenz, the author of the new bill that would legalize sports gambling in Minnesota, and another DFL senator, Senator John Marty, who has a bill that would make prediction markets illegal here. Joining me right now is Senator Nick Frenz. Senator Frenz, thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure, Esme. Good to see you again.
All right. Many people have tried to get gambling bills through the Minnesota legislature of both parties, and it hasn't worked. Why do you think your bill could be different?
Well, we're hoping people will take into account the fact that in the last year, the federal government's made some rulings that essentially allow prediction markets to, they claim, make sports betting legal in Minnesota. That's a matter of some litigation around the country. But if we accept that sports betting's now being allowed in Minnesota, I think many people feel the better path is to regulate it and make sure that it's safe, to kick out bad actors, and to have it benefit groups of Minnesotans, including those that say they'd like the freedom to do it legally.
So basically what you're saying is the Trump administration, the way it has dealt with these prediction markets, Kalshi and Polymarket, it's basically making it legal here in Minnesota already.
It does appear the federal government in the last year has ruled that commodities, including prediction markets, like I predict the Vikings are going to win the Super Bowl next year or win by a touchdown next week, for example, is now legal in all 50 states. And you mentioned the two prediction market companies. They are advertising, including saying it's now legal to bet on sports in all 50 states. So yes.
Okay. What's the feedback you've gotten? Because a lot of people are new to this and not quite on top of this regulatory change that the president has made.
Well, first, people are saying, wait, what now? About the prediction market change at the federal level. The Minnesota state legislature has not passed any legal sports betting within the state's borders. So the first thing I'm getting is, tell me more about what's happened in the last year on the federal level. The second thing is very similar to the, my words, not yours, competing ideas about whether the sports betting that's going on illegally in the state now is better regulated and made legal. That includes discussions about who gets the licenses, if there's tax revenue for the state, how we might spend it on youth sports, charitable organizations, et cetera. And so there hasn't been a fundamental change in the legislators that are for or against, just a little bit of change in the playing field. Who would get the profits? How would they be split in your bill? We would have a division of the revenue amongst various stakeholders. This would include charities, Minnesota Sports and Events, which, as WCCO viewers know, brings events like Super Bowls, World Junior Hockey, Women's Basketball Championships to the communities. We have the licensing through the Native American tribes. This is part of a promise that the state has generally made, which is that we won't allow an expansion of gambling without their partnership. And those dials, if that's the right term, can be turned. In fact, the version of the bill that I'm authoring now is slightly different from what it was a year ago. In terms of the role of the Native American tribes, this is a big sticking point, and people have to go way back to 1989 and Governor Perpich when these compacts were signed, which essentially gave the tribes, in their view, a monopoly on sports betting or betting in general. Have the tribes signed off on your particular proposal, and what would their role be in terms of administering it? Sure. Minnesota Indian Gaming Association, MIGA, is supportive of the bill. They would be the exclusive licensees, free to make their deals with online mobile sports betting platforms, some of which you see around the country. I'm one that feels that we want to not break promises that we make to any Minnesotans. They're a group of Minnesotans who we've made promises to. I recognize other legislators think it could be done differently. It could, but I'm not willing to put my name on a vote to break that particular promise.
Okay, so they would do it. Let me ask you, is there, shouldn't there be a bigger role for the state sharing in the proceeds? I'm aware of what you're saying. You don't want to break the compacts, but is there any way of making that happen? Because perhaps that would encourage more support.
Well, first of all, I'd be glad to hear that that's the sticking point. I think the main sticking point we're hearing from legislators is concern about the problems associated with gambling, the same way we hear about problems with drugs and alcohol, some of which are now legal in the state. If that would be a change that would make legislators more open to it, I'm open to it as the chief author of the bill. That we have 22% as the tax rate now, so the state is a partner. And as I mentioned, the state has an interest in where the proceeds of that revenue would go, like Minnesota sports and events, like youth sports in my district and where I live in North Mankato. Youth sports are a critical part of the community quality of life for a lot of reasons, and this would fund some additional programs across the state.
So the way you have it set up, you're saying that state tax and taxes essentially are the way that all Minnesotans would share in the profits of this.
Yeah, and Esme, if the state wanted to tweak those portions of the revenue and distribute them differently or have them go into the general fund where we pay for little things like education and healthcare, I think that's fine. I think the fundamental question is, we have sports betting going on in Minnesota. Do we think it's better to regulate and tax it, which 40 other states have done, or to continue to make it illegal and deal with it that way?
And your bill, I know, has been advancing. Where is it right now?
Actually, it has been sent to the Rules Committee over a dispute about which committee will hear it first. We are at committee deadline here this week, and so I think there's some question what the next step is. I'm in touch with the House author who says they're making some progress, but as you know from watching the Capitol for a while, there's progress and then there's progress. I think it's uncertain whether a sports betting bill will get across the finish line. For some journalists I like almost as much as you, I've told them it's 50-50 this year. I guess we'll see.
Well, Senator Frenz, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Well, Senator Marty, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be with you today.
All right. What is it about prediction markets that has you concerned?
Okay, first of all, prediction markets, nobody had heard of them a year ago. They've gone from here to way up here in just no time, and I'm worried about what's going to happen next. They are outside of any kind of gambling regulation that Minnesota's always regulated gambling. We have a lottery, we have charitable gambling, we have racetracks, we have tribal casinos, all of which are regulated. And this is something that was used. I mean, commodity futures trading was something that's always been used, but it was never intended as a form of betting. And in the last year, it's just exploded in that. And there's no regulation, and basically people can bet on anything. There are stories of some Israeli officials who were betting on strikes in Iran that sounded like they had insider information. It's a wild west in terms of gambling here.
But Senator, it's the president who's in the Trump administration that's allowed this.
That's the federal government was actually looking at regulating this a year ago, 2 years ago, and the Trump administration has decided that they think this is just well and good, and if people want to profit off of it, they're apparently with okay, but it violates all of our state gambling laws, and we want to make it clear that it's not acceptable.
Well, I know that you have been really opposed to any form of expansion of gambling on its core basis. Can you just explain how this kind of goes with that?
Sure. Well, first I want to point out that we've got people who are pro sports betting expansion and people who are against it all on the same page on this because they recognize this doesn't fit. Those who are pushing for other forms of gambling, they're trying to do it in a legal framework. And here it's just people coming in and just ignoring our state laws. So I think it's got a different chance politically because, again, I Some of the folks came to me and others because they knew we were opposed to gambling expansion, and they see this as just blowing everything out of the water that we've already got and just going to bury the state in more gambling.
Right. So you're saying that you've got bipartisan support. I'm sure you've got bipartisan opposition. Do you think you got enough?
We're hoping not a lot of opposition. This a similar bill passed the House Public Safety Committee, and I didn't hear any votes of opposition in either party, which is rare around here these days. But in other words, I think it's bipartisan, bicameral, in others, both House and Senate, and both sides of the sports betting debate. We have myself and one of the former authors of the sports betting bill, Senator Klein, he's a co-author of the bill, Senator Rasmussen. We've got people on both sides of the debate in both parties, in both houses. So I think this one may actually make it through because it's just not something we've allowed in Minnesota. And it causes all kinds of new things. Under predictive markets, people could be betting on if this bill will pass. And I can give somebody a tip that here's what's going on and hey, we can tank this bill or something else. People could it's a corrupt system. Same way you don't want insider trading of politicians on stocks. You don't want insider betting on political occurrences or election outcomes or anything like that. So I think that's one of the reasons we've had so much strong, as I'd say, bipartisan support for this.
Well, and that's just a very clear example that's easy to understand. Senator Marty, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good to talk to you.
And that does it for this edition of Talking Points. We will continue to follow Senator Frenz's bill. As always, please feel free to email me with comments and suggestions at esme@cbs.com. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Esme Murphy, WCCO News.